So I bought an armored car company, big trucks, bulletproof glass, guys with guns. I thought I was buying the coolest trucking business on earth. Drive the money from one building to another, collect a fee, simple. I was not buying a trucking company. I was buying an insurance policy that happens to have wheels. I found this out the expensive way. Somewhere out there right now, an armored truck of mine is idling outside a bank. And I promise you, the truck is the least interesting part of that whole picture. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why the truck is the cheapest part of this business, why my own employees terrify me more than robbers do, and why the biggest heist in this industry's history didn't involve a single gun. Let's start with day one, standing in my new garage. I looked at my fleet of armored trucks and felt like a Bond villain. Steel plating, reinforced tires, a windshield that could stop a small asteroid. Each one of these trucks cost me somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000. I remember thinking, this is fine, this is an investment in serious hardware. Then I got the fuel bill. Turns out 2,000 pounds of armor plating drops your fuel efficiency by 25 to 30%. My trucks eat gas like they're personally offended by it. I have genuinely watched the fuel gauge drop while the truck was just sitting still at a red light, idling, judging me. The brakes wear out faster too, from hauling around all that extra steel. I bought expensive trucks, expecting the trucks to be the expensive part. They were just the entry fee. Here's the twist nobody warns you about when you sign the paperwork. Nobody is paying me to drive a truck. They're paying me to make a problem legally disappear. When a bank hands me millions of dollars in cash, they're not paying for a ride. They're paying to hand their liability to somebody else. That somebody else is me, lucky me. The actual diesel and tires are a rounding error, compared to what I pay for insurance and bonding, just for the privilege of being trusted with other people's money. I now understand why this industry is basically three companies wearing a trench coat. You can buy the trucks, you cannot buy the trust. No bank is going to hand a brand new guy their cash reserves, just because I showed up with a shinier truck and a lower price. I once offered a regional bank a rate 20% below the big incumbent. They thanked me for my time and stayed with the company they'd used for 30 years. I learned this after weeks of pitching banks who looked at me like I'd asked to borrow their car and their firstborn child in the same sentence. One branch manager actually laughed at my proposal in front of me. Not a polite laugh, a real one with a little cough at the end. Getting properly licensed nearly broke me before I even started. Firearms permits, currency transport permits, insurance riders that a normal trucking company has literally never heard of. Every single guard needs their own state license, renewed constantly with a fresh background check every single time. I now spend more time filling out paperwork than I ever imagined possible for a job involving trucks with machine gun ports. At one point, I had a folder labeled simply compliance that was thicker than the owner's manual for the truck itself. All right, numbers aside, let's talk about the thing that actually keeps me up at 3 in the morning. You'd think the scary part of this job is some masked crew robbing my truck on the street. That does happen, and it is genuinely terrifying. But the worst incidents in this entire industry's history didn't come from outside the truck at all, they came from inside it. In 1997, in Charlotte, North Carolina, a vault supervisor at a major cash company simply walked out the door with over $17 million. He already had legal access to. Nobody broke a lock, nobody fired a shot. He just had the keys, and one day he used them to leave. It remains one of the largest cash heists in American history, and the getaway vehicle was basically his own good reputation. I read that story during my first month owning this business. I did not sleep well that night or several nights after that, honestly. I now trust my own staff the way you trust a raccoon near an unlocked cooler. Every background check, every camera, every dual signature procedure isn't some annoying overhead cost. It is genuinely the entire product I am selling. External robberies still happen too, and they are their own nightmare. A single successful robbery of one loaded truck can cost millions of dollars in a single afternoon, on top of the very real danger to the people I employ. I have personally called an employee's spouse after an attempted robbery to say everyone was okay. That phone call rearranges your priorities faster than any spreadsheet ever could. My insurance premiums reflect both of these fears at the exact same time, the stranger with the gun and the guy already inside wearing my own uniform. There's a slower, quieter threat too, one I try not to think about after a good year. People just use less physical cash than they used to. Every year, a little more commerce happens digitally instead of in a paper bag. Fewer bills moving through the economy eventually means fewer trucks needed to move them. I've started leaning into cash management technology and vault processing services, trying to become a company that manages money, not just one that drives it around. I am slowly turning myself into a tech company wearing a very heavy disguise. My accountant thinks this is smart. My inner 10-year-old who just wanted to drive a tank is heartbroken. All right, let's put some real numbers to this because the theory doesn't pay my insurance bill. I sat down with my accountant for this part. He brought his own calculator that should tell you something. Say my company runs 40 armored trucks across a few cities. Average revenue per truck, contracts, and per stop fees combined lands around $800,000 a year. That's about $32 million in total revenue. Feels great to say out loud. Now the costs. Vehicle upkeep and armor maintenance eat about 15%, roughly $4.8 million. Insurance and bonding alone, because of what this business actually is, run about 20% or $6.4 million. Labor is the real monster here. Background checked, licensed, often armed staff. Runs about 45% of revenue, $14.4 million. Add general overhead around 10%, $3.2 million. And my total costs land around $28.8 million. That leaves me with about $3.2 million in profit. A 10% margin, respectable, not exactly Bond villain money. Now let's talk about a bad year because I've had one. One regional bank client consolidated and canceled a multi-year contract on me. My fleet utilization dropped 15% overnight. Revenue fell to around $27.2 million. But my biggest costs, the insurance, the bonding, the licensed staff, didn't drop anywhere close to that fast. My total costs only fell to about $26 million. My profit collapsed to roughly $1.2 million. That's a drop of over 60% from losing one single client relationship. I found out about the cancellation over email on a Friday at 5:15. This is why every contract in this industry runs for years, not months. Nobody wants to redo all that background vetting and insurance underwriting more often than they absolutely have to, least of all me. I've started sending my best clients a small gift basket every December. I'm not proud of this, it works. So here's my honest advice from a man who now flinches at his own payroll department. If you're buying an armored car company because trucks with gun ports sound cool, that's a fun daydream. It is not a business plan. If you're buying one because you want to become genuinely excellent at insurance, bonding, and trusting people you can never fully verify, you might actually have what it takes. I bought an armored car company thinking I was buying trucks. What I actually bought was a trust business, where the biggest threat isn't the guy with the mask outside. It's the guy with the keys standing right next to me. Some nights I still stand in the garage looking at those trucks, and part of me still thinks they're the coolest thing I own. That part of me is wrong about what actually runs this business, but I let him have his moment anyway. If you want to see what happens when I buy the next terrifying business idea, subscribe because there's always a next one.